Discover 5 spine-chilling paranormal encounters caught on camera, exposed haunts and sinister tales. Sarah had always felt safe in her little suburban house, a place where laughter echoed and love thrived. But that comfort slipped away one night as she clicked through old footage from her home security cameras. She'd been just checking in on her kids, making sure they were cozy asleep, when something flickered on the screen. Her heart pounded as she witnessed shadows darting outside her window. They weren't just shadows. They twisted and contorted into shapes that sent an icy chill racing through her. What was that? A trick of the camera? Her overactive imagination? But when she felt the hair prickle at the back of her neck, she knew something was wrong. The toys in the living room began to show up in odd patterns, arranged like an altar or a summoning circle. Even her children, who had always been her anchor in the storm, seemed unnerved. They whispered about their invisible friends with laughter that quickly turned hollow. "They tell us secrets, Mommy," at night. Sarah could feel her heart race, the thump drowning out logical reasoning. Pressing her fear down, she called the local police. Their dismissive chuckles echoed in her ears. Just a stressed single mom, they thought. No one believed her. As she wandered through her neighborhood the next day, she felt eyes on her from behind closed curtains. Familiar faces, once welcoming, now hid away, their smiles replaced with suspicion. It felt like she was watching a horror movie where she played the unsuspecting victim. In desperation, she reached out to an online paranormal investigator. He agreed to help, arriving equipped with high-tech gear on the most oppressive night yet. As they set up cameras around her living room, the air thickened in an eerie silence, almost vibrating with anticipation. Flickering lights began to play tricks on her mind, each creak of the floorboards sounding sharper and closer, mimicking her mounting dread. Was something really lurking in the shadows? As the evening unfurled, unsettling truths about the neighborhood emerged. Talks of past tragedies and residents lost to the darkness in odd circumstances skated on the brink of their conversation like a chilling shadow. But what leapt from the screen, freezing Sarah's blood, was the image of a figure, barely visible, hanging just past her property line. An unexplained presence that had escaped her notice all along. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The sound of something heavy thumping against her door jolted her back to reality. A rush of panic coursed through her. Every survival instinct screamed to protect her children. She was perched on the edge of her chair, breathless, heart pounding, as shadows danced just beyond her view. The world outside had twisted into something unrecognizable. Suddenly, the whispering voices she had brushed aside came flooding back. But this time they weren't just secrets, they felt like threats. Was this figure connected to her home? To the past tragedies that clung to the neighborhood? With the tension coiling tighter around her, Sarah realized she had crossed a line. Her safe haven was becoming a battleground. The night stretched on, dark and suffocating with the weight of her vulnerability. What was waiting outside? As she stepped closer to the door, dread wrapped around her heart, and a silent understanding loomed. She might not escape the horrors that lurked within her community, nor the shadows that whispered her name. With trembling hands, Sarah gripped the doorknob, its metal cool against her skin. Every fiber of her being screamed to retreat, to run to her children's rooms and lock them all inside. But curiosity pulled her closer to the unknown. She pressed her ear against the door, straining to hear through the suffocating silence. Was that a voice? Soft, guttural, rising and falling like the tide. Suddenly, the thumping turned into a series of relentless knocks, each one louder, as if relentless fists demanded entry. Her heart raced. The figure she had seen on the camera danced like a specter in her mind, a haunting image of despair. "Mommy!" It was her son, Jason, his small voice cracking with fear from down the hallway. "What is happening?" "Stay in your room," she shouted, trying to keep her voice steady even as dread pooled in her stomach. She tore her gaze away from the door and rushed to him, glancing back as a shadow flickered again, this time vanishing just as fast as it arrived. Jason's eyes were wide, filled with ghosts of the night. His sister, Lily, clutched his arm, her face pale and eyes swimming in tears. "They're coming," she muttered, her childlike innocence overshadowed by something darker, something lurking outside their home. "Who?" Sarah asked, panic hooking her breath tighter and tighter. But before she could hear her son's answer, the television flickered to life without anyone nearby to turn it on, casting a flickering glow across the room. Images danced across the screen, scenes of their neighborhood, but twisted, warped. Red glows engulfed the clips, interspersed with grainy artifacts of events that sent chills down Sarah's spine. It was as if the TV were a window to another time, one filled with fear and sorrow. Sounds of distant screams mingled with the laughing whispers she had dismissed before. "Mommy, turn it off," Jason yelled, tugging on her sleeve, panic fleeing from his every pore. She fumbled with the remote, fingers shaky against the buttons. But it was no use. The power had surged from her control, plunging her further into the eerie spectacle on the screen. Then, against her will, she was drawn to a particular frame frozen on the display. A dark figure stood at the end of her street, just at the edge of their yard. A flash from the security footage reminded her of the figure outside, a matted hair, sunken eyes, grinning as if they knew the children were watching. "No, no," Sarah cried. In a surge of fear-induced adrenaline, she yanked the TV cord from the wall, plunging them into darkness. "Mommy, help!" Lily screeched as a low growl rumbled from beyond the door, vibrating through the wooden frame, as if the very foundation of their home quaked under its weight. "Get back!" Sarah pulled her children against her as she inched back toward the door, her mind racing with desperate thoughts. Could they escape? Would they have the chance? The growling intensified, now accompanied by scratching sounds, like claws tearing at the wood, wanting entrance. Somewhere in the din, a soft voice broke through, calling to her from the depths of her memory, a voice that promised comfort but twisted into something sinister and taunting. They were not alone. Gripped by fear, Sarah's eyes darted to the windows, seeing shapes move through the darkness outside. Shadows, so many shadows closing in around the house. "I won't let you take them," she shouted, the fight inside her sparking. She had to protect her kids, but a creeping realization sank in. The evil out there knew them. It had been watching, waiting for her children. What did the figure want? Why was it interested in her family? "What do you want?" She could barely utter the words, heart hammering against her chest. The growling ceased, replaced by an unnatural silence. Berating her own bravery, she stepped back and glanced toward the living room camera feed. There, behind her, the figure loomed large in the shadows. She blinked, heart racing. But it wasn't just watching. It was moving toward her. What would happen next? The air felt thick, suffocating, as Sarah held her breath, acutely aware of the figure inching closer. Everybody had stayed inside for what felt like forever, but now time twisted around them, stretching each second into eternity. The glow from the TV cast an eerie light on faces turned pale with fear. Lily whined softly, and Sarah hugged her tight, determination mixing with dread. "We need to get out," she whispered, but a biting voice echoed in her mind. Where would they go? The streets were crawling with the shadows that had been watching them. "Mommy!" Jason cried again, his little body trembling against her. The scratching at the door grew more insistent. She dared to glance backwards at the monstrous silhouette now discernible in the dim light. Its features were obscured, a grotesque mask that promised suffering, a mix of familiarity and horror that twisted in her gut. Suddenly, the front door shuddered violently, as if some unseen force had slammed against it. The children whined, each cry throbbing like a hammer to her heart. "No, you're not taking them," Sarah shouted to the darkness, hoping her venom could fend off the reality creeping closer. But the shadows laughed in their eerie whispers. With shaky hands, She grabbed the heavy coffee table and positioned it against the door, her breaths rushing out in staccato bursts. A soft jingling sound, almost playful, made her head snap to the window. There, the curtains billowed as if inviting in the night. Sarah couldn't help but wonder if it was her imagination or another sinister figure lurking nearby. "You need to keep quiet," she hissed, seeing Jason's eyes dart nervously toward the window. The beastly growl punctuated the silence again. Its laughter accompanied the relentless scratching. Each scrape sent chills down her spine. It echoed through the air, a morbid lullaby of despair aimed at her children. Sarah's mind scrambled for options. There was a desperate need for action. They could go to the back door, maybe out through the garage. But what if it was waiting there too, eager as if it were playing a game? Mommy Lily's voice faltered. The weight of her gaze made Sarah's heart clench painfully. Could they really make it? "Listen," she said, her voice soothing and a bit more confident than she felt. "We're gonna be brave, okay? On the count of 3, we run to the back door and out into the yard. We stick together." Both children nodded, the flicker of hope struggling against their fear. She counted in whispers, feeling the air thicken around them. 1, 2, 3. She flung the coffee table aside and sprinted for the back door, clutching her children tightly. The growl shifted again, morphing into something more guttural, more menacing, as though it reveled in the chaos of their escape attempt. But the doorknob felt cursedly cold as she twisted it. "Please," she begged the universe, hoping it would somehow cooperate. The door creaked open, a gap of darkness beyond, ready to swallow them whole. She hesitated, fear paralyzing her limbs, but the children urged her on. "Mommy!" Jason cried, glancing back as the shadows pushed against the threshold. Then she heard it, a voice, pure and clear, cutting through the growls. "You belong with us," as if provoked. The figure, a macabre form moving behind them, lunged towards the door. "Run!" Sarah screamed, urging her children forward as they bolted into the swallowed darkness. The night air felt cold and electric, each step a jolt of survival. But just as she breathed a momentary sigh of relief, something whispered in her ear, promising sweet nightmares, only for her to turn and see the tattered edges of something now visible in the dark, twisted lie of the street. "What have you done?" The question hung with the weight of a promise, one that would unfurl slowly, dangerously. In the shadows, the figure grinned, and for the first time, Sarah felt the unmistakable chill of despair sink its teeth deep into her spine. Where would they go now? And were they even alone out there? The darkness enveloped them like a shroud, and for a moment, Sarah's heart raced with hope only to be crushed under the weight of dread. The street was an echo of silence, broken only by the frantic breaths of her children. Lily clutched Sarah's shirt, her small fingers digging in as if she would be swallowed whole if she let go. "Where do we go now?" Jason's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. He looked up at her, eyes wide with fear, searching for reassurance that she didn't have. "We need to find somewhere safe," she said. But the words felt hollow even to her. The world around them was a maze of shadows, each flicker of movement sending a wave of panic crashing over her. The figure had been close, too close, its presence lurking behind the veil of night like a predator. They moved, keeping to the edge of the street, the cold pavement biting at their bare feet. Sarah strained her ears for any sign of that monstrous growl, the cruel laughter that had taunted them moments before. The whispers mingled with the rustling leaves overhead, mocking her resolve. "You can't escape then," she heard it, a soft tinkle of laughter echoing from the darkness. Her stomach dropped. "We need to go," Sarah urged, instinct taking over. She spotted her neighbor's house. The lights were off, but it felt like their only option. "Over there." She pointed, her feet moving instinctively toward the familiar structure. Yet, with every step, that feeling of dread deepened. The shadows danced ominously, and a shiver raced down her spine. As they crept closer, the air felt different, charged, electric. A sudden gust rattled the trees, shaking loose dead leaves that swirled around them like ghosts. Sarah guided her children to the side of the house, crouching low against the cool wall. They could hear faint noises from within, thuds, clattering with someone else inside? The thought sparked a small flame of hope. Maybe they can help us, she whispered, glancing down at her children. Mommy, what's that? Jason pointed, his eyes fixated on the window. A pale face appeared, staring out at them, its eyes wide and lifeless. Get back, Sarah hissed, pulling them away, squeezing her eyes shut against the horror. The figure outside shifted, a shadow weaving into the fractured light cast from the single street lamp nearby. It was the same grotesque shape they had seen before, now twisted into a mocking grin. You should have stayed inside, it crooned, a soft, taunting melody that sent chills through Sarah's bones. With every fiber of her being, she willed her legs to move, pushing against the paralyzing fear. This way, she snapped out, tugging Jason and Lily deeper into the shadows, their little legs stumbling over gravel and cement. The laughter followed them, echoing off the walls. You belong with us forever, it taunted, a chorus of sinister voices blending into one another. Heart-pounding, Sarah's mind raced. The garage? Was that an option? Or back through the twisted streets where shadows thrived? Every door and window loomed like a black hole, threatening to swallow them whole. Mommy, I'm scared. Lily's voice cracked, her grip tightening painfully around Sarah's hand. I know, honey, just a little more. They sprinted to the garage, breathlessly pushing the heavy door open. A waft of damp, stale air hit them as they crossed the threshold into the dark. Is it safe? Jason's voice shook. I don't know, Sarah said, scanning the room. The darkness wrapped around them, thick as smoke. But then a sudden crash from the house echoed through the silence. What was that? Jason gasped. Then the figure appeared at the garage entrance, the silhouette stark against the faint light beyond. You can't hide forever, with adrenaline crashing through her veins. Sarah backed away, her heartbeat a wild drum in her ears. There was no going back. They had to confront whatever this was. But the walls felt like they were closing in, and in that instant, she realized if they didn't find a way to outrun the monster, it would swallow them whole. Stay close, she whispered fiercely, adrenaline propelling. We're going to fight back. But as she reached into the dark for something, anything, a low growl rumbled from behind. Are you ready to join us? What horror awaited them in their desperate moment? The growl throbbed in the air, an ominous drumbeat that vibrated through Sarah's chest. She dared not turn around. The weight of the darkness behind her felt alive, creeping inwards like a tightening vice. Mommy, I want to go home. Jason's soft voice broke through the suffocating silence. Panic twisted like a knife in Sarah's gut. There was no home left to return to. Hush, sweetheart, she whispered. We need to find something to protect ourselves. Her hands fumbled along the cluttered shelves, blind in the thick layer of dust and stale air. The script of her helplessness clawed at her thoughts as she searched for any weapon, a hammer, a crowbar, anything to ward off the nightmare stalking them. Then, a sharp metallic clang echoed from behind her. The garage door rattled, as if something were trying to force its way inside. No, stay back, Sarah hissed, clutching her children closer. The laughter amplified in response, a cruel symphony that sent chills down her spine. Mommy, Lily whimpered, tears glistening in her wide, terrified eyes. Hold on, just hold on, Sarah breathed, desperation trickling into every word. She found a rusted wrench buried under a pile of old tools. It was no sword, but it would have to do. She wrapped her fingers tightly around it, feeling the coldness seep into her skin, a stark reminder of the horror they faced. The overhead light flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced and swirled around them, and she felt it again, the weight of malevolence pressing against her, urging her to surrender. The growl morphed into something deeper, a rumbling laugh that reverberated off the walls. The door shook violently, rattling on its hinges like chains. Let me in. The voice crooned, soft and sickly sweet. Mommy, make it stop, Jason cried, shrinking back into Sarah's side. Please, God, she whispered, squeezing her children tightly. Not now, not ever. With a sudden crash, the door burst inward, splintering wood and sending a spray of debris into the garage. The figure stood silhouetted in the threshold, framed by the darkness. It loomed, monstrous and grotesque, a grotesque mockery of humanity. Its eyes glinted like glass, void of any light, its mouth twisted into that same haunting grin. "Did you really think you could run?" it taunted, stepping closer, darkness coiling around it like a living thing. "Back away," Sarah shouted, brandishing the wrench in front of her like a soldier's rifle. "Did you forget what I said? You belong with us," the figure hissed, each word punctuated with a breath of ice that pierced through Sarah's resolve. She felt the air thicken, the shadows beginning to crawl towards her. Panic surged inside of her. She had to do something, anything, to protect her children. "Lily, Jason, close your eyes," she commanded, heart hammering. She hoped her kids wouldn't see what she would do next. With a powerful swing, she launched the wrench at the figure, embodying all her hopeless courage in one desperate throw. It clattered uselessly against the concrete floor, the sound echoing into nothingness. "No, you'll pay for that," the entity growled, its voice deepening into a snarl as it lunged forward. Sarah felt time slow. The shadows seemed to merge, coalescing into arms reaching towards her and her children. A tidal wave of darkness. In that horrific moment, an idea sparked, an idea that sent her heart racing even more. If they couldn't run, maybe hiding wasn't the answer. Maybe, just maybe, the true fight lay ahead of them. "Follow me," she screamed, grabbing their hands. She turned and dashed past the figure, heart pounding like a drum, the taste of raw fear in her mouth. "Where are we going?" Jason asked, bewildered. "To the back door," Sarah shouted, hope flickering. As they sprinted to the rear of the garage, the dark figure screamed behind them, the sound echoing with rage. "Join us." The moment they reached the door, Sarah flung it open, the chill of the night air hitting them in a frigid wave. Outside lay the moonlit yard, but her heart sank further. The darkness wasn't confined to the garage it enveloped. Everything like an insatiable beast waiting to pounce. "We have to run," she yelled, stepping outside with her children in tow, the horrifying laughter chasing after them, reminding her they were far from free. What was lurking beyond the shadows? What awaited them on that desolate street? "Don't look back," Sarah urged, the sound of their footfalls mixing with the fading echoes of that sinister call. The moment they crossed the threshold into the night, the coldness seeped into their bones. Sarah glanced up and saw the moon, round and full, hanging like a watchful eye over the chaos. But there was no comfort in its light. It seemed to accentuate the menace, amplifying the shadows that stretched and twisted in unnerving ways across the yard. "Quick, to the front," Sarah shouted, pulling her children along, their small feet stumbling on the uneven ground. Every step felt heavy, like the earth itself was conspiring to drag them down. Behind them, the laughter twisted into shrieks, reverberating like a discordant chorus of madness. It was a sound that wormed its way into Sarah's mind, clawing at her sanity. "Don't listen to it. Just keep moving," she urged, forcing her legs to run faster, heart hammering. They sprinted toward the front of the house, but just as Sarah reached the corner, a glimmer of uncertainty cracked through her resolve. The street lay empty, desolate, with jagged trees hunched like watchers. Where was everyone? Homeowners were supposed to be safe in their houses, hidden behind their doors. But in the serenity of the night, it felt like they were the only souls remaining. "Will they find us?" Jason's voice squeaked with fear, a tremor that made Sarah's blood run cold. They can't find us if we don't stop," she lied, the taste of bitterness heavy on her tongue. As they turned toward the street, the wind picked up, swirling with unnatural force, sending whispers through the branches overhead. It felt alive, almost sentient, teasing the edge of her panic. "Mommy, please, I'm scared," Lily said, her little hand trembling in Sarah's grip. "Me too, sweetie. But we have to keep moving," Sarah whispered, not daring to look back. They reached the sidewalk and thrust into the street. Each step echoed an urgency, a desperate plea for safety. And for a brief moment, the laughter faded, replaced by the sound of their breath, quick and sharp. But then the air thickened again, the heavy dread returning like a storm cloud, an oppressive force looming, dragging down the last remnants of hope. A sudden flash lit the sky overhead. Sarah's heart plummeted as she looked up. An irregular shimmer darted across the moon, blotting it out momentarily. "What was that?" she gasped, her feet faltering. "It's just the clouds," Jason replied, though fear laced his voice. "No, it wasn't T-clouds," Sarah frowned. She had seen it, a shadow flitting, too fast for the eye, too sheer to grasp. "Just go," she commanded, panic spilling into her voice. They rounded the block, a futile attempt to put distance between themselves and whatever hunted them. Sarah felt the shadows shift, the darkness pressing against her back like icy fingers caressing the nape of her neck. Behind them, they heard it again, the guttural growl, mixing with the eerie laughter, sending a shiver down her spine. Suddenly, the gravel of the driveway crunched. Something was following. Sarah glanced back for a split second, and in that heartbeat, she saw it. That same figure, larger, closer, its eyes burning with a sickly glow, mocking their desperation. "Run!" she screamed, urgency consuming her as they dashed past houses, the darkness clawing at them, feasting on their fear. "Mommy!" Lily cried, panting heavily. A flicker caught Sarah's eye from one of the nearby houses, a light. Someone had a light on. Her instincts screamed for her to run toward it. Safety in numbers, a refuge from the malicious specter closing in. "Hold on," she urged again, dragging her children toward the welcoming facade. They neared the porch, half expecting the door to swing open. But the porch light remained dark, a yellow rectangle that barely shed light against the oppressive night. As they climbed the stairs to the door, her shaking hand raised to knock, was she really going to risk it? What if the light promised danger too? "Mommy, it's coming," Jason shouted, shaking. Sarah's heart sank, torn between the flicker of hope and the creeping dread. Before she could make a decision, the door creaked open, slowly, with the faintest whisper of an invitation. What or who had opened that door? "Get inside," Sarah screamed. But would that door lead to salvation or a deeper nightmare? As they crossed the threshold, the shadows tangled tightly around their ankles. Nothing would prepare them for what awaited inside. As they stepped through the door, the air inside was thick, stifling, and it instantly wrapped around them, suffocating their cries. Sarah instinctively shielded her kids, retreating into what felt like a tomb rather than a refuge. The dark interior was punctuated by trembling shadows. The only light came from the flickering bulb overhead, casting sinister patterns that danced across the walls like malevolent spirits. "Who's there?" Sarah shouted, forcing her voice to break through the suffocating silence. No answer came, only the echo of her own pleading words sank back into the darkness. "Mommy, I don't like it in here," Lily whispered, her small body pressed against Sarah, trembling like a leaf in a storm. "Shoo, it's okay," Sarah whispered back, but uncertainty laced her words. She gathered her children closer, straining to listen for any sign that they were not alone. The laughter outside had faded to a low hum, replaced by an unsettling stillness that hung in the air. It was too quiet, too calm. They could sense something prowling just out of sight, waiting and watching, its breath bated in anticipation. "Is there anyone home?" Jason called, somewhat more bravely this time, squirming from Sarah's grasp. "Just stay close," she replied, but her heart raced as the shadow flitting from her imagination crept back into her thoughts. Ahead, a hallway stretched into the blackness. Why hadn't anyone turned on the lights? Why was this place bathed in dark desperation? Sarah hesitated but sensed the gnawing urgency. They couldn't linger where they were. The promise of safety spurred her onward as she took the first hesitant step down the hall. The floor creaked underfoot, breaking the ominous silence but sending sharp jolts of dread racing through her. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears like a war drum, each muffled sound mingling with the echoes of her children's fearful breaths. "Look, Mommy!" Jason pointed toward an open door at the end of the hall where a thin sliver of light peeked out from the crack. It beckoned them like a lighthouse to a ship lost at sea. "Let us go," Sarah urged, the breathy whisper threatening to betray her tension. As they reached the door, the floorboards groaned beneath them, almost warning her. But there was no turning back now. The light danced within, a flickering glow that promised some semblance of safety. With a trembling hand, she pushed the door open. What met her was not a room, but a nightmare. The walls were plastered with photographs, faces twisted in agony, eyes wide with terror, frozen in moments of pure panic. They depicted people she didn't know, yet each image felt chillingly familiar. The names inscribed under each face sent a shudder through her. Each one was marked with a dark red X, as though something sinister had claimed them. "What is this?" Jason gasped, his voice trembling as his eyes darted from one photograph to the next, unable to look away. "I don't know," Sarah replied, cold fear clawing at her spine. Suddenly, laughter erupted once again, echoing through the house, sharper this time, clearer, like broken glass shattering in her ear. It resonated from above, cutting through her like a knife. "Mommy!" Lily clung to her leg, her face pale. Just then, a shadow danced across the photographs, an ominous presence looming over them. "Run! Back to the door!" Sarah screamed, adrenaline flooding her system. But as she turned, the door slammed shut, engulfing them in total darkness. The weight of malevolence pressed down hard, suffocating and asking what did they wake in this forsaken house? And above all else, who or what was now watching them? As panic surged, the laughter morphed into a sinister chant, each word a dagger aimed straight at their sanity. "Welcome home," it echoed, and the cold light extinguished the darkness, consuming them entirely. What happened next would change everything they thought they knew about fear. Time seemed to stretch, pulling at the edges of reality. In the pitch black, Sarah's breaths quickened, shallow gasps echoing back at her. She could feel her children trembling, pressed together, forming a fragile barrier against the impending doom. "Jason, Lily," she whispered, forcing herself to maintain some semblance of calm. "We need to find a way out." Her words tasted of desperation. Then came the sound scraping, a slow, deliberate noise that slithered through the darkness. It crawled up her spine, stilled her heart. Where it came from, she couldn't tell. It echoed and faded, leaving a sinister silence in its wake that seemed more daunting than any sound. With trembling fingers, she searched for the handle of the door, only to find smooth wood where the knob once was. The scent of dampness thickened around her, cloying and rancid, like decay lurking just beyond their reach. "Mommy, I can't see," Lily whimpered, panic shining in her voice. "Hold on to me," Sarah instructed, her voice steady but shaky. She could hear the harshness of her pulse thrumming in her head. "We'll be okay." As she took a cautious step forward, the sound of laughter crept back, this time low and mocking, wrapping around them like a serpent. It seemed to rise from the very walls, taunting them, inviting them deeper into some grotesque game. Suddenly, light flickered back on, not from the door, but from the walls around them. The photographs had transformed. The faces now moved, twisted in agony, each image whispering in a chorus of fear. "Oh God!" Sarah couldn't contain her horror as one photograph adorned with the name Margaret opened its mouth wide. A soft, pleading wail escaped the confines of the frame, stretching into the darkness. In that moment, Jason gasped, his small fingers clutching tightly to Sarah's arm. "Are we trapped here forever?" The innocent question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of unanswered dread. "No," she insisted, though uncertainty dripped heavily from her lips. Desperation boiled inside her as she tried to think. Hadn't she heard a story somewhere about a spirit that lived in a house like this? Something that fed off fear? Rattling creaks echoed from above, rippling through the house. The roof felt like it was collapsing upon them. Shadows writhed across the walls as if trying to break free. "Mommy, I can't stay here," Jason cried, but she didn't know how to reassure him. "Then we'll find a way out, I promise." Taking another unsteady step, they moved deeper into the room, desperate to find another way to escape from this hell. Suddenly, the shadows clustered together, forming into a shape a figure cloaked in darkness, its face a void. It reached toward them, but as it did, the photographs erupted into cruel laughter, mocking her in a grotesque symphony. "Welcome home," the voice croaked, this time sharper, more knowing. It thrummed with an anticipation that sent waves of nausea across Sarah's stomach. In that blinding moment of horror, realization clawed at her mind. The house wasn't just trapping them. It was feeding on their fear, their panic. But before she could react, the air around her changed, thickening instantly. She felt icy fingers wrap around her throat, squeezing tightly as if pulling her down into the black abyss of despair. As she gasped for breath, her vision began to fade to black, her reality slipping away like grains of sand through her fingers. And then, just like that, everything stopped. The laughter, the cold grip, even the whispered silence enveloped them again. Sarah opened her eyes, blinking against a sudden blinding light. She was outside the house, her children clinging to her, safe. Yet at the edge of the property, a dark figure stood, watching them with unblinking eyes. Was it all a nightmare? She wondered, her heart still racing. But her instinct screamed that something far worse lay ahead. "What's inside?" she whispered, unsure if she wanted the answer. The children looked up, confusion clouding their innocent features. "Can we go back in?" Jason asked, a hint of thrill in his voice that chilled her. "Deeper than the shadows within." "No," Sarah replied, her voice firm. "We're never going back." Yet as they turned to leave, a gust of wicked wind swept through the air, whispering, "Or are you?" They were left with a hollow dread, a chilling uncertainty that this was far from over. What had they unleashed, and would it now follow them home? The chill in the air clung to Sarah's skin like a damp shroud, swallowing the last vestiges of warmth as she turned her back on the house. Each step felt heavier than the last, laden with an unshakable sense of dread. Jason and Lily walked close, their small frames a flicker of warmth against the encroaching cold. But Sarah couldn't help but feel that any moment could bring the darkness crashing down again. As they made their way down the gravel path, the dark figure at the edge of the property didn't move. It watched them, a silhouette against the waning light, its emptiness a whispered promise of nightmares yet to come. "Mommy, I don't like it," Lily's voice trembled, her bright eyes darting back to the house as if some unseen force pulled her gaze, seeking connection. "Just keep walking," Sarah urged, forcing her feet to move faster. She glanced back, the figure had shifted slightly, now closer, yet just far enough to remain shrouded in shadow. "Look away. Don't look at it," Jason echoed, bolstering his sister's growing fear. Sarah felt her heart quicken at the thought of what could happen next. Hadn't they suffered enough? Underneath her fear, something clawed at her mind, an echo of the laughter from within the house, twisting and mocking. The desperate laughter seemed to follow them, bouncing against the air and mixing with the rustling leaves. At that moment, an errant breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it a faint, chilling whisper. "Come back, run," she shouted, panic igniting every nerve in her body. The gravel crunched underfoot as they sprinted towards the front gate, the old wooden slats creaking eerily in the fading light. Then, before they could reach safety, the figure coalesced into shape, emerging from the shadows like a nightmare given form. It was tall, dressed in what looked like tattered clothes that fluttered like dried leaves in the wind. In the dim light, they could see its face, a grotesque mask of anguish, eyes sunken deep, radiating malice. "Mother, they belong to us," it rasped, a voice that slithered into their minds, each word slamming into her like a physical blow. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. A wave of terror surged through her, more visceral than she had ever known. They had escaped the house, or so they thought. "Mommy, help!" Jason screamed. The figure advanced, its movements unnatural, as if it floated just above the ground. Sarah gathered her children, their small bodies trembling against her. "Don't look, just keep running," she urged, pushing them forward. But no matter how fast they ran, the distance between them and the malevolent force seemed to shrink. The air felt heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and rotting wood. "Did you think you were free?" The voice taunted from behind, each word sending shivers dancing up her spine. "It is just the beginning." Echoing laughter erupted all around them, filling the night with a cacophony of horrifying mirth. It surrounded them, smothering them in a chilling embrace, wrapping them in the shadow of despair. The ground trembled beneath their feet as though responding to the figure's words. For a heartbeat, Sarah considered turning back, confronting whatever lay in the darkness. But deep down, she knew this was only the start. The house had opened a gateway, and they were now trapped in its game. They finally burst through the gate, but the atmosphere changed instantly. The laughter faded, replaced by a morbid stillness. They stood in the road, panting, hearts racing. "What was that?" Jason asked, voice small with confusion and terror. "I don't know," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The thought slipped through her mind like sand. She could sense the darkness behind her head, depth, intent. It hadn't just come for them, it was hunting them. "Can it follow us?" Lily's innocent question pierced the night, asked in a tone that begged an adult reassurance. Before Sarah could respond, a loud crash echoed from behind them, the sound of something breaking. They turned to see the dark figure stood at the edge of the property, laughter spilling from its void-like mouth. "It won't be long," it hissed, the words lingering in the air, suffocating the last breath of hope. A nagging thought seized Sarah as they stood frozen. What if they were never free? What if the house had already marked them as its own? She felt the chilling weight of reality settle in. "Run!" she yelled again, this time with every ounce of strength she could muster. "We need to get as far away as possible." As they bolted down the road, adrenaline surged, but the sense of dread in her gut persisted. Behind them, the laughter faded into the wind, but it felt like a promise unfulfilled, an echo of terror that would haunt them. "Will we make it, Mommy?" Jason's voice barely broke through the storm of her thoughts. "I don't know," Sarah breathed, uncertainty pulsating through her as the darkness began to loom once more. But as they raced into the unknown, one thing became hauntingly clear: the house might have been left behind, but it would do anything to reclaim what it had lost. What awaited them in the night? Would their escape lead them to safety, or awaken something far darker? The night stretched like a cold, dark ocean, the only sound their frantic footsteps beating against the pavement as they fled. Sarah's heart pounded a desperate rhythm, an urgent plea for safety. Every step away from the house felt like a lifeline, every breath a silent whisper full of hope. But fear clung to her like the chill of the night air. The laughter echoed in her mind, relentless and mocking, each pulse deepening the certainty that they weren't truly free. She had hoped that crossing the gate would mark their escape, but something twisted in her gut. It felt as though the darkness had found a new way to chase them. "Mommy, please," Lily whimpered, barely able to keep up. Her small legs faltered, and for a moment, Sarah feared that the darkness would swallow her daughter whole. "We need to keep going." "Baby," Sarah shouted, pushing forward. Jason gripped her hand tighter, his little fingers nearly choking her, and she felt a surge of protectiveness rise. She wouldn't let anything take them. Not now, never. Out of breath, they paused at the end of the block, panting hard, minds racing. Sarah spun around, scanning the area. The street was deserted and silent, but that oppressive feeling lingered, hovering like fog, reminding her they had to stay vigilant. The figure at the house, watching and waiting, had promised this was just the beginning. "Where do we go?" Jason gasped, his small voice breaking through the haze of her panicked thoughts. "Anywhere but here," she replied, fear curling tightly in her chest. She thought frantically, the police, could they go there? Get help? Or was that risking exposing her children to even more danger? Just as she opened her mouth to speak, an echo of laughter wound through the air, carrying on the wind like a dark melody. It slipped between the trees, wrapping around them in an icy caress, raising the hair on Sarah's arms. "No," she spun on her heels. "We have to move." They stumbled back into motion, turning down side streets, only the shadows of the houses watching them like dark sentinels. Past the playground where her children used to giggle and swing, now it lay forsaken, a graveyard of echoes, silence thick and suffocating. Will it really follow us? Jason asked, his voice trembling, confusion cracking through the courage she tried so hard to project. Sarah glanced down at her children, gravity of their situation crashing upon her. I don't know, she admitted, fear tightening its grip. But we can't stop. We need to keep moving. But where to? Was there even safety in this twisted world? The thought gnawed at her insides like a relentless beast. She felt the darkness behind them shift, flaring with life, restless, drawn to their pulse, their fear. What if we go back? Lily said suddenly, her eyes wide, a mix of curiosity and terror lurking. Maybe it'll let us in again? No, Sarah shot back, the surge of panic ghosting through her veins. We are never going back. We will find a way. Something flitted in the periphery, a movement in the shadows that sent her heart racing. Adrenaline kicked in and they ran faster, feet pounding against the asphalt, voices left behind in muffled whispers of terror. Then through the haze, she saw a glimmer of light, a diner, warmly glowing like a beacon of refuge. There, she yelled, pushing her children forward. The glow felt like a promise, an oasis amidst a desolate landscape. But as they approached, a sudden chill whispered through her bones. The laughter, as though it had teeth, carried back on the wind, threading fear deeper into her heart. She skidded to a halt, breathing harshly, fingers flexing as she felt power wash over her. She would not give in, would not let that darkness alter their narrative. What if there are people inside? Jason asked, still fighting to keep up. They'll help us. They'll see what's happening. Sarah's voice was far from steady, but she gritted her teeth, rallying every ounce of courage within her. They burst through the glass doors, rushing into a small diner, the fragrant scent of coffee and pastries wrapping around them like a warm hug. Inside, a few late-night patrons sat in quiet conversation, unaware of the chaos lurking just outside. Please, we need help, Sarah gasped, trembling, still clenching her children to her side. The counter staff, a weary-looking woman with tired eyes, stared wide-eyed at the intrusion. What on earth? Darkness, danger? Sarah struggled to breathe, her voice barely a whisper. Please, they're coming for us. People's faces shifted from curiosity to concern. But before she could detail their plight, the diner suddenly plunged into darkness. The overhead lights fizzled and a low rumble echoed, deep and primal. No, no. The flickering lights returned, and she felt it, an oppressive weight, like a warning. The laughter had followed them. It echoed within the diner, emissaries of darkness tightening their grip. They're here, she screamed. We have to get out. Time warped again, every second coiling and uncoiling in terrifying slowness. The air thickened as the walls of the diner seemed to twist, shadows creeping along the floors towards them like tendrils. Out back, Sarah yelled, ushering her children toward the kitchen area. It felt like a gamble, but anything was better than confronting whatever lurked on the edges of oblivion. They pushed through the doors into the alley. The world outside felt impossibly still, but no sooner had they stepped out than she heard the unmistakable growling, rolling around them. The shadows flickered and writhed, an almost tangible force waiting in the corners of her vision, whispering promises of despair. What do you want from us? The answer came through an agonizing howl. The darkness seemed to rush forward. You cannot escape, you are ours. The trio dashed into the night, racing toward the only option left, whatever the next street might reveal. But Sarah's lungs burned with the fear of finally being caught, of losing everything. Hold on, she screamed, her body propelling itself forward, every frantic step a prayer. They raced into the void, their hearts chambers of unrelenting hope and fear, knowing, somehow, that the nightmare was not over and that the shadows would find a way to them. The night swallowed them whole, and Sarah held her children close, heart racing against the unknown that waited just around the bend. Would they ever find peace? Or would the darkness haunt them forever? It was only beginning, but she refused to surrender. They would fight back, and find the strength within themselves even when the shadows loomed. Together, they would face whatever horrors lay ahead. But deep down, She felt the chilling certainty that darkness had its grasp on their fates, had already begun weaving a new tale just for them in its sinister story. "Never give up," she whispered, as they ran into the new dawn on the horizon, uncertain of what lay ahead. Darkness would come, but they would be ready. Now you, dear reader, must take action. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second. Smash that like button to help spread the story that has chilled us all to the bone. Flood the comments section. I want to hear your theories about what happens next. And don't forget, share this story with at least 5 friends who need to know the darkness that lingers just outside their doors. Let's keep this community alive and thriving. Together, let us unravel the tales that haunt us.